Hello everyone. I'm here to provide a little bit of information about new features that are available in Kinetix. In the last release, a lot of multiple and very interesting features were added to the software, and they are already available in the website, so you can start trying those features right now. And I wanted to prepare at least a simple tutorial, a simple explanation about what those features are about, because at first sight those features might seem like they are complicating things, but in fact they are there in order to make the software more versatile. So I wanted just to provide a little bit of explanation about those features in order to make sure that nobody gets scared about what those features are about. The first feature that is available, that is important, is a little change that was added for the pitch test. The pitch test works just the same. You provide the size of your page, your resolution, you provide the target lenses per inch that you want to observe, because, well, the software generates like a central band, and around that band, and whatever number you put here is the band that is generated. It generates variations from this central band in steps given by this amount, and this is just a margin around the page to make sure that the printer doesn't print beyond the border of your page. So it is like an empty space that is left in order to never get too close to the border. There is the option to remove banding, that for this resolution I usually use 0.15, and if you don't use this option, if you just request to generate a pitch test, well, for example, you select where are you going to save the information, and it immediately generates the pitch test. It doesn't take too long, really. But, well, actually it takes more time to apply the algorithm that removes banding, but and saving the file, because, well, it is saving, everything is still working in the PNG format in order to have the best quality possible. Yeah, we can just give it a little bit more time, and yes, it generated the pitch that is this one, and it generates the pitch in black and white, with the central band being the number that you put here. So if you want a band centered in another number, for example 49.7, and maybe you can make steps smaller in case that you want a more detailed pitch, but the process is the same. And when you select this option, color test, I mean, you just select this checkbox and request the same thing to generate pitch test. And in this case I'm not going to generate because I already have the test here. It is exactly the same, but in this case it generates the pitch test using colors. And it is quite useful to use this option because it is easier to observe which one is the correct pitch. For example, here I have a video about how does it look, the pitch test, when you are trying to measure the correct pitch using the color pitch test. Let me change the orientation. Oh yes. So it works the same as always. You are looking for a band that exhibits the same color in all the extension of the band. It is basically the same thing that you are looking for when you have just a black and white pitch test, but in this case you are looking for a band that is the same color always. So for example, this band here, it is approximately the band that I see that has the same color in all the angles, but well, you can measure as much as you want, and you can generate steps smaller in case that you have certain doubts about whether you are in the correct band or not. But just as an example, this band seems to me, well, around this area is the area that seems to me that is the most appropriate for the pitch. So you just need to be a little bit careful, and it is just exactly the same process, but instead of looking for a complete black to white transition, you just are looking for a uniform color in all the extension of the band. So that's one of the changes. Another of the changes is this effect that I call the sharpening effect, but it is easier to understand if I present this effect with an example. So for the example of this, I created this project just as an example that is composed of a 2D 3D effect on the bottom, just some portraits with a depth map that is going to generate that 3D effect. Then on top of it, there is a multi-image effect that presents a perfect loop of colors, and by perfect loop I mean these are the images that I'm using for that effect in this case. They complete a perfect cycle. It doesn't matter how much do I advance, the continuation of the last image is the first image. So that way I have a perfect cycle, and in this case I have an area with transparent a transparent area, and I'm using that transparent area in that case right on top of the portrait, so that the image that is below in this area is visible. Then on top of it I'm using this effect, the sharpening effect, that I'm going to explain in a moment. And then on top I'm just using another 2D 3D effect. So if I visualize this effect, setting here lenses, a number of lenses per inch, and I request the program to visualize this composition of effects, is going to show me approximately how does it look, how is it expected to look once it is printed. So the idea is it is going to generate this effect, a 2D 3D effect that is visible through this window and this area where apparently these characters, apparently the sharpening effect, and of course, and you have a license of the software. When you attempt to close this window, it's going to ask you whether you want to save the visualization that you have here. You can say yes, and you can save it in a file as a GIF file, and it takes a couple seconds. It just need, the program just needs to compress all the information, and once it is compressed, you can play the animation again. I mean, if you are in Windows, you just double click the image, and the image will open with whatever software that you have set as default for playing GIF files. And yes, you can replay your animation as many times as you want. But well, again, as I was saying, the sharpening effect, which is the effect that I'm using to load these characters, it doesn't seem like it is doing anything. And that is exactly the case, because it is not an effect that is supposed to be visible here in the visualization, but it is an effect that improves the quality of characters or designs that have very small details once they are printed. So I have a picture here of the sharpening effect, showing what it does. So well, these are two the same design. On top, I printed these characters without using the sharpening effect, and at the bottom I printed these characters using the sharpening effect. As you can see, the characters on the design on top are not as, I mean, you can force yourself to understand what it says, but the truth is it is not very clear. I mean, to some degree you have to guess what some of these characters are trying to say. But at the bottom you have these characters that are much more readable. You don't really have to guess what these characters are about. For example, this character this is an email, francisco@galeriacinetica.com. This is not, I mean, I completely guessing this character because it is not really understandable. But in this case, you have the same characters, but every single character is much more readable. And that is exactly what the sharpening effect is all about. The purpose of that effect is to make to improve the resolution of what is presented on that effect. Usually when you have a lenticular, the smallest detail, the smallest let's say your pixel becomes the size of a single lens. So in this case, because my lenses are about 50 LPI, that means that usually my resolution, my smallest feature that I can add to my design is of that size 50 LPI. But by using the sharpening effect, I can introduce details that are smaller than the size of a single lens, and they become much more understandable. You do not recover the whole 720 dpi of resolution, but you can make sure that whatever you are printing is more visible through the lens. It's not as damaged, as distorted by the effect of the lenses, because the sharpening effect is actually applying like a transformation that cancels the distortion of the lenses in order to make the information more understandable. So that's one of possible applications. And well, this is a video of the same thing, of the same example, but in this case as a video. Let me and but it's basically the same. So you can see that it is not always easy to understand here, but it is much easier to understand the details here, particularly when you are looking to this design with both of your eyes. Like you appreciate that the information that is not resolved by one of your eyes is completed by the other. So it is actually easier to understand this thing when you are looking with both of your eyes instead of just one eye. In this case, the camera can only pick the information from one angle, but even for the camera is easier to understand the information in this case. And another application of this sharpening effect that I find useful is for introducing QR codes. In QR codes, well, QR codes use a quite robust algorithm, so they can actually restore some of the information that is in the QR code, even if it is lost. But the QR code algorithm is not perfect necessarily, and this is an example that I tried myself. I tried this one is without the sharpening effect, and this one is with the sharpening effect. To the naked eye, there is not like a great difference, but for the camera, for at least for my smartphone, it was a difference comparable to day and night, because in this one, in the example in which I used the sharpening effect, it was totally easy to scan the information in the QR code, but in this case I couldn't scan at all. I couldn't decode at all the information in this case, in the example without the sharpening effect. But in this case I didn't even have to try. I mean, no matter which angle I choose to scan the information, I was perfectly capable of decoding the information in the QR code. So the sharpening effect helps a lot to resolve information that is with small details, information where the smallest details are comparable to the size, or even smaller to the compared to the size of a single lens. So for when you want to include information in a QR code, in a lenticular, and you want the smaller details to be easier to understand, to be visible, the sharpening effect can help you a lot to make those details visible. Anyway, that's one of the effects that is available. And the other options that were added to the program are here. When you let's say that I want already to interlace this thing. So when I open, when I select it doesn't matter which one do you select. This window is going to open that allows you to provide some more parameters for the interlacing. One of the important things to remember is if you can actually ignore all these parameters and just press accept, and it's going to ask you where do you want to save your file, and after that it immediately starts interlacing your file, and the result of that is it interlaces exactly, I mean, the whole it will generate this thing. It will generate this thing. I mean, it interlaces your whole design, and you have exactly what you wanted without any complication. So in most cases, you can simply ignore all those parameters and simply interlace everything without changing anything if you don't really want to like customize your interlacing process. But you can starting this version, you can customize a little bit how the program interlaces your file. For example, the program usually selects exactly the appropriate number of frames to generate for the 3D effects, or for the operations in order to interlace your design. But you can force here using these multipliers in order to make use of more frames, to generate more frames and to interlace using more frames. I don't really use this option, but I mean it is available if anyone wants to try. Usually when I want to increase the number of frames, I go to this menu, to the size menu, and increase the resolution. For example, I can choose to increase the resolution to 1440 dpi, and if I select rescale, it is going to rescale all my project in order to interlace everything at that resolution. I can also change the size of my project. For example, here I can select 10, and as you can see, the moment I change one of the dimensions, the other dimension also changes, because it keeps the aspect ratio of your pattern, which is, I believe it is desirable. So whatever you change one of the parameters or the other, automatically the software is going to accommodate in order to keep the aspect ratio of the images. But in this case, I don't really want to change the resolution of my project, but you can definitely do that. And if you change the resolution, for example, in this case to this thing, once you try to interlace, the program is automatically going to generate more frames without any need to using this multiplier. So usually when I want to increase the number of frames, I actually change the resolution, but you can force the program to use more frames if that's what you want, and everything is fine. So there is another parameter, the alignment mark thickness, and that basically means the thickness of this thing, these alignment marks, the thickness here and here and here. It is the thickness of all those marks that are added to my design in order to help me to align the pattern. The area, well, normally you can simply interlace everything, and well, I'm going to illustrate this with an example. This is a different project that is composed only of a 2D 3D effect. So I can visualize this thing. It is just a portrait. It doesn't make any special thing. But one of the things that happen when you are working with a 2D 3D effect is usually you run out of pixels of information at the sides. So currently the program just extend the information that is at the borders, extends the information like outside of the, well, when there is no more information available to extrapolate or to decide what information to put here, it just extends the information using the values at the borders of the image. And sometimes it is not, maybe it is not desirable always to use these areas. Maybe you would want to cut your design just here, and maybe just here in this case, in order to keep only the area that is actually that has valuable information. Because sometimes maybe this extension of the pixels is not desirable. So in this case, this area here allows you to keep less area, considering to interlace an area that is smaller than the area of your whole design. So for example, here I interlace that design in two different ways. Here I'm interlacing everything, including those pixels that are extended. And in this another example, I just decided to interlace an area that is smaller. So how did I do that? Well, I simply kept an area smaller than the area when you open this window, it automatically shows the whole printing area, the whole area that is available for considering your design, and you can simply keep an area that is smaller than your whole area. In this case, because the movement is in from the left to the right, there is no need to cut in this in the vertical direction. It just needs to be cut in the horizontal direction. But I can actually, I mean, if I want to, I can cut my design in both directions. If I, for some reason, extend this thing manually beyond what is possible, it automatically goes back to the maximum area that my design has available. My design in this case has this area, 5 centimeters in the vertical direction, and 3.5 around 3.5 in the horizontal direction. So if I try to extend myself beyond that area, it automatically goes back to the maximum possible, because there is no information to extend beyond that area. But you can definitively use a smaller area, and the program is allowing you to do that. So that's how I generated this image. I just kept a smaller area. In this case, I kept 2.5 centimeters. So I interlaced this thing like this, and this was the result. And there is another option available in the program, that is this one, repetitions. You can actually generate multiple copies of your design, as many copies as you want, and interlace all those copies in a single pass. And in order to make easier for you to laminate, because, well, in my experience, it is easier to laminate something that is bigger. If you have designs that are small, it is easier to generate like multiple repetitions of your design and laminate all your design in a single in a single pass with your laminator. Usually you get the alignment that you get when you laminate multiple copies is better compared to the alignment that you get when you try to laminate just a single element that is small. So but in this case you can generate multiple copies, and you can do that by simply selecting here how many copies do you want in both directions. For example, well, you can generate 3, for example, or 5 in this direction, and 8 in the y direction. But it is, I mean, it is not always easy to calculate how many repetitions can you fit in a page. So for that purpose, there is this button, calculate based on the area. If you press that button, you can actually set the dimensions of the page that you are going to use. When you open this, well, when you press the button, it automatically opens this smaller window. that already has the dimensions of a letter page. That is a paper size that is quite common in Mexico and also in the United States. But you can set here whatever size of page that you are intending to print, and also the margin, the area that you want to leave close to the border of the page, that you want to leave an empty area. So this space is like the empty area that you leave close to the border of the page. And it can, if you just click accept, and you can see the numbers here, it automatically change the numbers in order to just keep the number of repetitions that can fit in your printing area. So in this case, you can put 5 copies of this design in the horizontal direction, and you can put 4 copies of the design in the vertical direction, to make sure that you do not surpass the printing area that you have available here. And of course, that depends on the design. If I open my previous design and I calculate again for the printing area, it calculates a different amount of repetitions. So this is based on everything. Actually, it takes into consideration the alignment of the thickness of the alignment marks. It takes into consideration, for example, this is spacing. Spacing is the space that it leaves between the repetitions of your design. So you can create a design with a smaller amount of the space. You can also reduce the margin, for example, and maybe this way you can fit another repetition in one of the axes. If I press accept, I can see that I could fit another repetition in the y-axis in the same printing area. So it takes into consideration everything. And the only issue is when you create multiple repetitions of a design in your printing area, you have to consider something that I call deviation. And I have a couple of slides explaining what I mean by deviation in this case. Okay, these are my slides. So let's assume that I want to have this design with multiple repetitions in my page. What I want for this design is that when I'm looking to every single copy of this design from a frontal perspective, the design is going to look like this. I mean, if I place myself right in front of this copy of my design, I'm going to see my design from a frontal perspective, and the same is going to happen in this one. If I place myself in front of this design, I'm going to see my design from a frontal perspective. That's what I want. That's what I desire. But for that, I have to take into consideration something. When I'm measuring my pitch and when I'm preparing my design to be printed, I usually consider a single position, the frontal position. For example, if I'm aligning this whole thing, I usually place myself right in front of the central position in order to align my design. So what does my eye see from that perspective? In here, I'm just giving an example of what happens if I have like a transition between a red and green color pattern. And as you can see, if I want every single of these lenses to display this pattern of red and white, I have to displace a little bit the position that where I print this red and white in order to present that information to the eye, because I need to consider the perspective. So the more inclined I am, the placing of these colors, red and white, is a lot more and more out of the area that is below the specific lens that I'm considering. For the central position, you basically are printing your pattern exactly below your lens, but when you go out of when you are observing something from an angle, in order to see that transition red to green in below this lens, I need to place my colors red and green a lot out of the area exactly below this lens. But from the perspective of another observer, and that's why I'm using a different kind of eye here, if this observer in a different position is observing this lens, this observer is not going to be observing these pixels that are a lot of angle. He is going to be observing these pixels that are here. So you actually need to consider this correction. This correction is associated with the thickness of your lenticular sheet, and more specifically it is related to the focal length of your lenticular sheet. But you need to introduce a correction in order to display exactly what you want to display, because if you do not if you do not make a correction, and well, in this case, this is I'm trying to illustrate this thing also introducing these images, and maybe for the person in the central position, he's going to be looking to this image, the image of this portrait from a central perspective. But for the other person that is looking to this position from a frontal position, he's going to appreciate this portrait of angle. So instead of having this thing where every single thing display the portrait from a frontal perspective, you are actually going to obtain this. Like the more you move to the left or to the right, you are going to observe, when you place yourself right in front of this copy, you are going to observe this thing of angle. So instead of every single copy being optimized to be observed from a frontal perspective, it is optimized to be observed actually from this perspective, from an inclined perspective. And you don't want that. You don't want to optimize these copies to be observed from an off-angle perspective. You want every single of these copies to be as good as these ones. So for that purpose, you have to compensate your the copies. The more distance they have from the central position, the more compensation they need to be. The more compensation you need to introduce in order to display these things from a frontal perspective. So for the purpose of doing so, I actually introduce another kind of test similar to the pitch test, where you need to specify. Well, you first measure exactly your pitch test. For example, in my last attempt, I measure my pitch test for the lenticular sheets that I have available right now. My pitch test was this thing, was 49.77, And if you use the drop down menu here, you can you have another option available here that wasn't available before, the generate deviation test. And it is basically the same. And the deviation test is always generated in color. It doesn't matter whether you select here a color test or not. It is always generated in color. And it is similar to a deviation test. It is similar to a pitch test in that it is, it generates fringes of colors, and it provides these numbers. But these numbers are not pitched. These numbers are what I call deviation. That deviation is the number that you need to put here in this field in order to correct your. If you are going to generate multiple copies, if you are going to use these options to generate multiple copies of your lenticular design, then you need to set a deviation. And how do you well, only the first number says this deviation. Well, but all the numbers represent deviation, so it is a different amount of deviation. How do you use this deviation? You mention in order to measure the deviation, you place yourself in front of your lenticular in front of your pattern, this pattern that is once it is laminated, and you need to move yourself to the left or to the right, and you just need to pay attention to the color that is right in front of you. For example, in this case, there is a color here that is like a blend between green and cyan. So when you move to the left, this color needs to move with you at the same speed. So when you put yourself to this border, in front of this border, this color between red and cyan needs to move to the border with you. And if you advance in the opposite direction, again, this color between red and cyan needs to move with you. You need to select a band in which the colors moves to the left and to the right at the same speed that you move yourself. So in order to make things easier, this is an example of a deviation test that I did myself. And just let's so not every single band is going to move at the same speed. The colors are not going to move exactly at the same speed that you are moving, but at least one of the bands is going to move approximately at the same speed that you. In this case, I noticed that this pink color kind of moves at the same speed that I'm moving. And again, it doesn't mean that the whole band is moving. It is different than a pitch test, because in a pitch test you have like a band which is of uniform color, but in a deviation test you have multiple colors. Every single band exhibits multiple colors, but you are just looking for a band in which the color moves at the same speed to the left or to the right that you are moving in both directions. So here I kind of selected this band, but it totally depends on you. So in this case, once I selected the band, I can see that this band is 0.54266. So that is the deviation that I need to use if I want to use these options. So create multiple repetitions in the horizontal and vertical direction, and if I provide this number to the software, if I set that number here, what number? Well, let's say well, whatever number was there, if I set that number, then the program already knows how does it need to compensate the multiple repetitions, and it is going to generate my copies of my pattern to make sure that I don't observe this, to make sure that I have these repetitions in which every single copy is properly compensated in order to display information, the proper information from a frontal perspective. If you are just going to generate a single copy, you don't actually need a deviation. I mean, if you're just going to interlace a single file like this, if you are just going to generate a single file, you don't really need to set a deviation, and that's why when you open this thing, the deviation is set to 0. But if you want to generate multiple copies, like in these examples, then you actually need to use that number. And yeah, with that you can generate I mean, as many repetitions. If you have a plotter, you can generate as many repetitions as you need, and with that you make your job easier, because you can print a lot of copies of your original design and automatically just generate your file like this, and after that you just need to cut every single one of these copies, and it is easier compared to just printing one design and then the other and the other and the other. In this case, the software already takes care of that. And yeah, that's those are the most important changes that are available in the software right now. In the future, probably this kind of gradient effect, I'm probably going to introduce this effect directly in the software. The capability to generate this kind of effects, well, I call this thing gradient effect. I generated these images using a software of mine that I wrote. It is just that it is not it wasn't created for this language, let's say. I just need to re-implement that, so that algorithm for this thing. So likely in the future this effect is going to be included in the software, but I'm still working on multiple things about this software. So yeah, well, in the future I hope to add that effect, but in the meantime all the effects that were discussed here are already available in the website, so you can just download the version, the latest version of the software that is available on the site. And if you have a license, then all these features are available for you, especially this option for repetitions, because I mean, having a license, you can generate interlace files for larger areas. The free version of the software only allows to interlace 15 centimeters in one direction and 15 centimeters in the other direction, so it is quite easy to use the whole area, and before the program starts introducing watermarks. But I mean, if you have a license, at least the most basic license, you can generate at least a page like this thing without worrying about having watermarks in your files. So anyway, all these features are already available in the software, and I hope you find something useful here in the program.